What's up, y'all? It's Dr. Paul with a conservation video for Liberty Hill Comics, where I share my passion and over 40 years experience comic book collecting, investing, and conservation with you. Today we are continuing our video series in which we clean and press this Silver Age key comic book and prepare it for submission to CGC. We're going to get to work dry cleaning the back cover, where the bulk of our dry cleaning needs to take place, as is typical for comic books because back cover ads usually have a lot of white or light backgrounds, and these show dirt, grime, and other foreign substances much more readily than the heavily inked areas typical of the front cover. I'll show you the tools and techniques I use to accomplish dry cleaning of a Silver Age comic book, so if that sounds like fun, stick around. In case you missed it, last episode we talked about Showcase number 60, the first appearance of the Spectre in the Silver Age after a full 20 years absence from comic book publications. We talked about the historical significance of the Spectre, his prominence in the early Golden Age, his founding member status of the JSA, and the big bucks that his early cover appearances demand in the market. We also discussed the CGC census on this comic book and the fair market value before completing a walkthrough assessment of the condition of this comic book and developing our game plan. This comic book presents really well for a nearly 60-year-old comic, but had some notable flaws, including rusty staples, rust migration into the paper, a minor spine split, a few color-breaking spine ticks, as well as some minor color-breaking creasing, and some general soiling. We also noticed that this comic book had been dry cleaned before, and not very carefully. A previous cleaner had left eraser marks on the cover of the comic book that disrupted the gloss. We set as one of our goals to address the gloss loss on the cover. In episode 2, I dry cleaned the front cover of the comic book, cleaning up especially the white areas on the Spectre's body and the title in the trade dress using cotton rounds and a few different erasers of different diameters to suit the areas we cleaned. We successfully removed some foreign substance from the cover and nearly 60 years of dirt buildup. Satisfied with the results, it was time to move on to the back cover, and that brings us to today's episode. Alright, let's get started with this back cover where all the excitement is, at least with respect to the problems we have on this book. We don't have that beautiful Murphy Anderson cover, but we got a lot of work to do. We have quite a few defects. The back of this book has the bulk of the soil and issues on this book, and of course this is where a previous cleaner left us some marks to clean up, so polish up / deal with. As always, clean and dry hands when you start cleaning and pressing, or even just handling your comics, your friends' comics. Got a couple questions on the channel. It comes up regularly. Why don't you use gloves? Some people come at me aggressively. You don't know what you're doing. You're an idiot. You should have gloves on handling a book like this. Well, turns out that's not true. Here's a little defect. These are foreign substances. These are something that they look very similar to what we saw on the front cover, and that responded well to a cotton round with higher pressure, so I'm going to go at it in the same way. And it looks like it's coming up beautifully. So we're removing this. It's somewhat sort of like gummy, almost like tarish, a little bit soft, whatever this foreign body was, something that never completely hardened. And so the cotton round is the best tool here, as we learned on the front cover. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Something worked really well for that same defect elsewhere. Use it again. Now, we have this gloss loss, especially on the top of the book. I'm just kind of reevaluating. There's some on the bottom as well. from that previous cleaner. I'm just sort of reevaluating the book before I get started with erasers here. But back to the question of hands versus gloves. I'm going to switch here to my Pentel Click Eraser, my weapon of choice for most of my dry cleaning. I'm going to stick to the white areas with this tool. It will lift the inks from Silver Age books readily, so you want to stay away from the areas with ink. I've found you can use it on black ink gently, successfully. The other colors, it's more of a crapshoot. This book has sort of a film on it, and I get a buildup on my eraser. And you'll see that that's true in some areas more than others. So as I'm cleaning, if you look at the eraser, it will have a dark sort of covering on it. And what I'm going to do when I feel that, you can actually feel it if you're paying attention. The eraser sort of glides over the paper rather than grabs the paper. And when I feel that, I'm just going to go over here on my hobby mat and I'm going to clear that layer off of my eraser. And I know from experience what it feels like when it's been cleared. If you don't have that experience yet, look at the tip of the eraser, see if it's dark or if it's still white. If it's still white, you're good to go. If it's dark, use something a little bit abrasive, like the surface of your hobby mat. Some people like to have a piece of sort of rough surface cardstock that they do that with. You can use a backer board, especially the non-slick side of the backer board is going to work quite well for that. Anything that you want to use. Some people use those Absarine sponges even. Not my choice, but those are all suitable things to use to clear that grime. That grime will just build up on your eraser. Your eraser doesn't crumb properly. You want your eraser to be shedding crumbs as you go, and you should see that the crumbs initially are dark, and when they're dark you can tell you're removing grime, dirt, other substances from the surface of the book. And when those eraser crumbs are white, then you know you've successfully removed all that you're going to get with that tool and you can move on. One of the things that I say about the pressure is that if you're removing all the dirt in one pass, you're using too much pressure. Much better to use 10 gentle passes than one high pressure pass. You're going to get better results. Notice I'm having to clear the tip of my eraser quite a bit here. That means that I'm picking up some grime that isn't clearing and isn't shedding crumbs or isn't allowing the eraser to shed crumbs there. And that's why I'm cleaning that tip of the eraser more often in this area than I was in the other parts of the cover where I started. So I'm just going to use that process. I tend to go around the book. I tend to go counterclockwise. I'm not sure why. It's just kind of a habit. But I will bop around as well. Back covers, as we've talked about before, tend to have a lot of white space. This gutter around the book tends to be a place where there's a lot of dirt. You spend, as a cleaner, a lot more time on back covers than you do front covers. And of course, there's more redundancy because maybe Marvel published 20 or 30 books one month. They all have different covers, but often they'll all have the same back cover. So you tend to get really familiar with these back covers. At any rate, while I work around this perimeter and now into the interior of the book, let me get back to the subject of bare hands and gloves. So a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing. Some people watch a couple videos or they think about it and they say, oils from your hands will destroy this book. And they again, come at me. Some of them, conscientiously, thoughtfully. Some of them rather aggressively. You're an idiot, right? Well, it turns out, in fact, that real conservators, experts in the field, have studied this. And they've concluded that clean and dry hands is the safest way to handle most documents, even documents of historical importance and ancient documents. And why is that? Well, clean and dry hands actually do not deposit an appreciable amount of oils on paper, but clean and dry hands without gloves have much more tactile feedback. And so they found that over time and with experience and gathering a bunch of data, that in fact people with gloves much more often damaged paper objects because they had less tactile feedback and they were more likely to rip or otherwise stress paper because they don't have the feedback that you get from having skin on paper contact. So the Library of Congress and other conservation entities, institutions, recommends in fact that you do not wear gloves generally, but you use clean, dry hands. Now, of course, there are times when you might want to use gloves. Certain modern books are almost plastic. They're more ink than paper. And, on those books, you can leave a fingerprint almost by looking at the book. So you may want to use gloves on those books. And, there are instances like, for example, maybe you're handling a book that's been infested with mold. Maybe you want to wear gloves. There are times. But generally speaking, I don't wear gloves. And I don't wear gloves for a very good scientific reason that's backed by the Library of Congress and other conservation bodies. So that's why I do it the way I do it. You choose to do it the way you want to, obviously. As we make our way around here, I'm clearing a lot of eraser crumbs, and they're accumulating now. And we've removed a lot of soiling from this. Not sure why the previous cleaner focused on these small areas on the top and bottom and created those really harsh disruptions in the gloss, but didn't bother to clean a lot of these other areas which have very obvious soiling. But we'll correct that. Notice when I get to the edge there, I'm always working away from the edge. You never want to drag your eraser back across the edge. You can easily tear these books. Now I've shifted to a cotton round. The reason I've done that is because I'm satisfied with the dry cleaning that I can get done with an eraser. And what I'm trying to do now is re-burnish this cover. Sort of like polishing it. I'm trying to... In our first pass with the cotton round, we were trying to pick up dirt, but here we are not really have anything left that the cotton round is going to pick up, which is why it's nice and clean. But we have the ability with the cotton round to normalize the cover. That is to say, if we have one area that's more glossy and another area that's a little matte or just semi-gloss, we can use the cotton round here to start to make that gloss more uniform. So I'm going to do a fair amount of work here, especially because this book in this area right here and on the top had significant loss of gloss. And we can restore that gloss just by burnishing it with the cotton round. You see there's already a more uniform gloss there. So it's looking much better already. We removed a lot of dirt from the back cover, and it's ready for our next steps. Because this back cover had those harsh eraser marks disrupting the gloss, I'm going to hit it with the document cleaning powder next episode, which will help continue to normalize the gloss on this back cover and should set us up nicely for a final burnish to complete our dry cleaning. We'll wrap this video up here and do that procedure next episode, then give this book a press and get it off to CGC. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video and will join me for future episodes. If you did enjoy the content, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and of course subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you made it this far, then you're a true fan of this sort of content, and I want to call your attention to the 2024 YouTube Comic Book Community Awards. Creating content for YouTube is a labor of love, and a way for us to connect with others that share our passion. The awards recognize the incredible amount of work that goes into creating content for YouTube and bringing it to you viewers. I'm humbled and filled with gratitude to have been recognized this year as a finalist, and I'm thrilled to be listed among these other fine channels. Please take a minute and go vote for one of us. Everyone here is doing it for the love of the community. I've put a link in the description to make it easy for you to cast your vote. And if you want more comic book conservation content, check out the live show which airs Sunday evenings at 8:35 Eastern with my co-hosts Captain Larry of Flying L Comics and Phil of Phantom Restoration. Until next time, take care of one another.